Hey, and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Weather Nerds YouTube channel. I'm your host, meteorologist Greg Majeski, your trusted weather source here with the weather report here on your January the 22nd, 2026. I guess we can call this a special edition as we're dealing with this soon-to-be massive winter storm here across the country as we're going to be tracking this thing and give you the latest details on this update here for this morning. Now, if you are new to the channel and you appreciate somebody's going to give it to you straight without being hyperactive and kind of treat every storm as the storm of the century, then please, by all means, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Now, this is a big storm. This is why we don't like treating every storm as the storm of the century. So when we get a big one like this to come along, you take it seriously. So please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit that notification bell. Very important, because if you don't do that, YouTube won't let you know that I posted something. So please do that. Anyway, let's go ahead and start off and take a look at what we had across the country. I thought it was really interesting yesterday that we actually had a 100-degree temperature swing exactly across the country. We had minus 20 up in Stanley, Idaho, and 80 in McAllen, Texas. Those were our extremes across the country yesterday. But we're just waiting for this thing to get going as we're watching this very cold, bitterly cold Arctic air that's coming into the country. We've got this low pressure that's going to be moving off the California coast. It's going to be traversing across the country. And when this thing moves, it's right off the coast here. It's going to be moving right along in here. And it's going to dump so much snow up in this area. There's a little bit of a deviation there. It's going to be quite impressive. Not to mention freezing rain for a lot of folks. We're talking 24 states, thus the thumbnail, being impacted by this thing for today. So here is a closer perspective. There's the low right there off the California coast, swinging on off of Los Angeles. In fact, they may even get some heavier rains with this thing moving on in. A little quick look at the radar right there. You can kind of see those rains just off the coast right now, set to move on in. Let me put that into motion for you there a little bit. There you go. As you can see, the rain's kind of moving in. That's part of that low pressure system. That's just now starting to make its presence felt in California. And by the time we're done with the weekend, folks are going to say, hey, do you remember that storm back in 2026? That's what I think this is going to be. It's definitely going to be a big one. And folks are going to be talking about it for a long, long time. Let's go and look at our current weather map out there. As I shut that down a little early, sorry about that. As you can see there, as we're watching this very cold air coming on into the country, the one area I want you to pay attention to here is look at what's going on up here in the high plains. I mean, some very, very cold temperatures up in here. We got minus 20 up there at International Falls. There's a minus 15. Got minus 20. These are going to get progressively colder as this thing comes down. And when I show you the temperature profile, you're going to go, wow, it's cold. And a lot of the country's going to get it. In fact, the American GFS is hinting some areas, even in the deep south, going below zero. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. You got to see that here in a second. But today, what we're dealing with here is we've got this fairly weak system here across the southeast. Not really too big of a deal here. Obviously, this is the system of note to watch as this thing moves on in, and it kind of rides between that boundary. It's called a baroclinic zone, boundary layer between the cold Arctic air and the mild air to the south. They're going to play bumper cars with each other, and it's going to be a mess in the aftermath of this storm. So, again, you don't believe me the size on this? Take a look at this. Wow. I mean, we're talking everywhere from up here in New York State all the way back down in here toward New Mexico. That is 24 states. I think I counted that correctly. You're going to see more of this map light up pink in the days ahead. Right now, a lot of winter storm watches out there. The pink is your winter storm warnings, and a lot of the country is going to light up like a Christmas tree as this thing comes on in. Now, we're watching different types of precipitation with this event, and I know a lot of folks are sometimes getting a lot of this kind of confused up. So obviously the snow is part of it. That's where the atmosphere is nice and cold, and we're going to get snow just falling all the way down to the ground. Not bad. Then you get some places that get a little warm layer where that snow kind of melts into rain, but has enough to refreeze, and we call that sleet when it comes down the bottom. And then just plain old rain, basically, but the surface temperatures are sitting at 32 degrees or below. So, or below, we're going to let it that way. And then, of course, you got rain. So, but we're dealing with three types of precipitation, and exactly how this Arctic air dictates how it interacts with that mild air of the south will dictate what kind of precipitation you're going to get in your zone. All right. So we're going to go through this again like we did yesterday, except we're going to add one additional model to this. We're going to look at the higher resolution model in there as well. But we're going to first start off by taking a look at the latest European model. That, of course, is my model of choice. It is definitely the more accurate of the global models are concerned anyway. So let me back this up here again for you here, and we're going to go through this. This is the 6Z run, the latest run. And again, we're watching this system back here. This is the one that's going to cause all the fun. Here it is right here. And then we got this Arctic air, very cold Arctic air kind of coming in air out of Canada. Here's again, 1052 high. That is a very strong and powerful Arctic high pressure system that's dumping down into the continental United States. And these two are just going to bump up against each other. And you see, again, that orange on the air. One thing has been consistent with the European model. It doesn't really show a whole lot of sleet. Sleet you typically see is orange. It is basically, it says it's either going to be all snow or freezing rain. That tells you there's it's a very thick Arctic air, and it drops off very fast as it bumps into that next air mass. Okay, so again, not really much of a transition zone there. So again, we're looking at this setting up. Now, the folks up across the Carolinas and into Georgia, you got a wedge setting up in here. And so as this mild air is trying to push out ahead of it, it's going to bump into that cold air. So the icing is going to be bad into the Carolinas, into Georgia. Look how large of a field we're looking at here with icing, just icing. Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, coming into Virginia, the Carolinas, and of course, Georgia. Everybody getting in this, a large field here of icing that's going to knock out power for literally millions of people, folks. That's not an underestimate there. So, again, watch as this thing goes on. There'll be very heavy snow on the northern end of this. Now, we'll say this, that the European model is a little bit further north than the American GFS model, which I'll show you here in a second. As this moves on through, it clears on out, and then we've just got some bitterly cold air coming down in here. This way, some below zero temperatures in here going in toward your Tuesday morning, although the GFS is even colder with it. And again, it's saying settle down once this goes on by. All right, so there is the European model. Here's the snowpack. There's the track right there, and we'll kind of move this a little around a little bit so we can go a little bit closer so you can see your areas there. We'll start to south central there, as you can see there across Oklahoma, Texas, getting up into Arkansas and Missouri. Some pretty healthy amounts in here. Seeing there's a 10-inch right there. Here's another 10-inch over here. There's 11 inches right there. So we got, 8 to 10 inches of snow in this field. We'll go here to the east. Let's go to the eastern part of the United States. Again, looking at that snow track taking you right up through Kentucky, 14, 15 inches of snow, and then going in close to a foot of snow into Pennsylvania, into New York State, and into New England. So again, millions of people are going to be impacted by this thing. We'll add some more winter storm watches and stuff up there into New England as well. So more than half the country, before it's all said and done, will be impacted by this storm. Now, the other part of this equation, obviously, is the most devastating part of this, is going to be the freezing rain element on this. Okay, so we're going to look at the freezing rain. And again, you look at the southeastern portion of the United States, so going a little bit closer here. As you can see, a lot of heavy freezing rain. Anything over a half inch is going to cause you problems. Anything over a half inch is going to weigh down the power lines, and especially if you get up to an inch, you're talking about destructive, widespread power outages with this system. So, folks, if you're anywhere in these freezing rain zones, plan on your power to be out for days, because you have to take into account so much of this country is going to be impacted by the storm. You're not going to have power crews from neighboring states to help you. It's going to be your own state's power folks being able to restore power, because the folks in the north are dealing with snow. They're not going to be able to get on the roads. The roads are going to be really icy and cruddy because it's going to be very, very cold. And, maybe Florida and Texas, South Texas. I mean, maybe Florida. That's probably about the only one up the southeast. But a lot of the country is going to be impacted this. So plan accordingly for power to be out maybe 3 or 4 days. I mean, I really think that's going to be a problem. And here, going back here to the south central portion of the United States here, again, back over toward Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas with heavy ice accumulation. So please take this seriously and make sure that you plan accordingly. All right. Now, as far as the sleet element with this one, I'll just show the sleet just to show you it doesn't show a lot. You have some, but again, not a whole lot here, as you can see there across the south central, and then here across the top. Although let me get this in inches. Sorry about that. Let's get it in inches. There it goes. Less than an inch. Really not bad. So the sleet element on this particular model is not bad. Not bad. All right. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the GFS model. We're going to look at this one first. All right. So this one's a little bit faster than the European is. Again, keep an eye on that time cue there in the top right corner. You see a lot more orange, so there's a lot more sleet with this one compared to the European. That has been true with these models for days. They have pretty much been saying the same story, just different tale. They are pretty much have lined up pretty well with the freezing rain element of this, I think, for the most part. They're generally in the same areas there. Again, we're watching that cold air wedge coming in here across the east. That's going to cause the icing problems across the Carolinas and Georgia. And then a lot of freezing rain and sleet back behind this. But again, there's a big difference between the sleet and the freezing rain. Again, if the European is right, more people will be impacted with power outages. If the GFS is right, not as many, because it's showing a bigger sleet zone in here. All right, so this comes on through. Again, it looks like the snow is just a little bit further south than what the GFS is showing on this. And this clears on out, and then we're just plain old cold going into Tuesday. And going into Tuesday morning, by the way, what the GFS is doing is areas that are getting hit with heavy freezing rain or sleet or so, it is really impacting the overnight low temperatures. And you're going to notice that on the temperature map. I'll show you that here in a second. As this looks on through, and then it keeps us pretty much cold. The GFS is kicking out this little system here across the south. I'm not sure if I'm buying this with this little snowpack right there, but that's just something to watch for next week. European doesn't show that, so just wanted to throw that out there. Now, here is the snowpack. This is a little bit further south than what the European was showing. Let me go back over here again. I'm going to show you the snow totals. Here again, this is the European. You see where that's at? All right. And then let me go this to the south. Let me go to the eastern zone here again. There's that one. And there's that one. So again, just a slight difference. They're a little bit further south, but they're fairly close to that. They definitely have lined up a little bit better. But this really impacts Tennessee as far as how much snow you're going to get. So a deviation, wherever that baroclinic zone sets up between the Arctic air and the mild air to the south, and where it all sets up, that is, we're talking tens of miles here, folks. It makes it very tricky. So it could change as we get a little bit closer, because we're now zooming in on the higher resolution models here, okay? All right, so again, that's that one. Let's look at the freezing rain total here on the GFS. On this, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. Let me get that back over here. Actually, yeah, let's go back over here and go to the freezing rain totals here. Again, looking at the southeast, again, you're looking at, I mean, this is really catastrophic if the GFS is right. This thing's kicking up over 2 inches of ice across parts of the Carolinas and into Georgia. And look at over 1.5 inches back here across Louisiana and Mississippi. Just really catastrophic stuff here. Going toward the south central. Not quite as bad in Texas, but still enough. I see a 1 inch there. That's definitely more than enough. Anything over 1/2 inch, and you're going to have problems. 1/4 to 1/2 inch, you're going to start having power outages out there. So again, the GFS is not quite as bad with the icing as the European, but again, still millions are going to be impacted by this thing. Absolutely, for sure. Now, where the big difference is with these two models is obviously with the sleet. Boy, wow, look at this. That is where the big difference between the two models are, is with the sleet model here. As you can see here, we got 3 inches, 5 inches in there. There's 5 right there. There's 5.4, 5.3. I mean, just a lot of sleet with this thing showing up here. And go to the southeast, again, across the Carolinas, also showing a lot more sleet than what the European's showing. So that's really the main difference between the two. It'll be interesting to see how this thing evolves as we go through the weekend, going in through all day Saturday and going into Sunday as this thing begins to evacuate on out. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the temperatures. And boy, this is a huge deal. This up here, you notice this gray area up in here. This is your below zero temperatures, and there are going to be a lot of folks that are going to experience this. This is going into Friday morning. Look how much of the country here by Friday morning are getting below zero temperatures. Quite a few. We're talking over Michigan, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, the Dakotas, Montana, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And that's just a taste. It really is just a taste of this. This thing's going to be hanging around for a while. And notice during the daytime temperatures, they don't change all that much. They're still staying below zero. So this is one of the coldest air masses we've seen here in a while. Then it goes into going into Saturday morning. It starts spilling into New England. Look at that. Most of New England here is now below zero. So we got below zero. This is the below zero line covering a big part of the country here. I'd say about 1/3 of the country looking at below zero temperatures here. And it just kind of sits there, and all country's hot. Then we watch this low. You see where that low and the high is right there. That low shows up very nicely here on the temperature. Here's our low right down here. Here's our cold front. Maybe some thunderstorms with this, by the way, too. Down there in Alabama, Gulf Coast, South Georgia. That needs to be watched. I'm not sure if we'll get severe weather with that or not, but it's possible. That's pretty warm. It's rubbing into the 70s there on Saturday and going into Sunday. This kind of moves on out. And then we got look at the Arctic air here. We got temperatures below zero down into Oklahoma, Arkansas, into Kentucky, going into Monday morning. And then going into your Tuesday morning, not nearly as bad, but still here across portions of the Northeast and on the high plains. So that's the European models version. Let's look at the GFS models version. Here's the GFS. Look at the temperature profile once again. Very similar going into Friday morning. Here's Friday morning right there. So very similar to what the European was showing. And then we go into Saturday morning. Again, we kind of spilling into the Northeast. A little bit of break, but very similar. They're pretty good there. And then we can track it to the weekend. Sunday morning, big storm going on, obviously, so not as much cold there because of the storm going on. But look what this thing does on Monday morning here. You start seeing more of this. Here's below zero temperatures. We got fresh snowpack. We got ice. We got everything on the ground in here. This is on Monday. And then check out Tuesday. This really blew my mind when I saw this morning. It's been kind of hinting at this for the last few days, but it's been very consistent here. Look at this. Below zero down into Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, the Carolinas. Again, this is all where that winter precipitation is going to be set up on the ground with that cold Arctic polar air overhead and drops temperatures right down to below zero. So some very frigid temperatures to watch in the wake of this big major storm going into next week. Now, before I wrap everything up, we're going to go ahead and look at the RRFS. It's one of the experimental 3-kilometer model runs here. And this is a radar representation of what we're expecting with this storm. Okay, so I want you all to take a look at this, what we're going to be watching here. Again, you see the area of low pressure here. This is the low right here coming off the California coast. You know we got all that cold air that's just kind of dumping on in here. And part of my poor arrow drawing there as it comes on in. So as this drives on south, it's going to run into that cold air. Look what it does when it runs that cold air up through Texas. See all that pink in there. Okay, so let me go in a little bit closer. I want to be very clear so you can see what's going on here. Oh, actually, it's not going to let me do that. All right, well, back it up here. Sorry about that. So that area there in pink is your freezing rain, right? There's your pink. You see this little orange area? That's kind of your sleet zone, and you got snow in the northern part of that, all right? So this continues on. Look how many people are getting impacted by this freezing rain. There's the snow on the northern end of this thing. And then it really starts to pick up going into Sunday as this thing moves on out Sunday morning and pushes off to the east. Now, I will say this one. This model here is a little bit slower than the global models from what I'm seeing. Just a little bit. All right? And it does break the wedge down completely across Georgia. And again, we got to watch the areas down here along the Gulf Coast for potential severe weather with this thing. If the low pressure here goes as far north as this particular experimental rapid refresh forecast system model is showing here. All right. Now as we go through the weekend, we'll get closer look at this as the time stamp begins to shrink a little bit. Now, one thing's for sure, regardless of what happens with this, I do want to show you this. Let me get this going here. I forgot to back that up. Stand by for a second. We're going to stay very cold. Look at that. Look at all that blue there. That goes from the 27th through the 31st and straight into Groundhog Day and past, going to February 4th. Half the country in the icebox, milder out in the west. Now, with that being said, once this system goes by, we're going to have all that cold air, but not additional winter storms coming at us. So it looks like a lot of the country is going to be on the dry side, going from the 27th to the 31st. And it pretty much stays that way, although the West Coast starts to light up a little bit more with some action out there as well as down along the Gulf Coast. But we are definitely stuck in the icebox here, my friends, straight into early February. So this real cold air really kind of started moving in across the eastern half of the United States back around January the 10th. And it looks like this is going to linger a little bit longer going into February. So definitely more of a prolonged cold period here. Typically, you get a pattern change every couple of weeks through winter. This one's definitely going to linger on a little bit longer here across the eastern third or half of the United States for sure. So if you're any of these areas in here, I'm going to go back to the watch warning map. If you're in any of these areas here, you got today and really tomorrow to kind of get yourself together, although tomorrow it starts deteriorating there across portions of Texas and Oklahoma. But everybody else kind of into the, Kentucky and, back to Louisiana and going into the Northeast. You got a lot of time to get yourself prepared for this. I know a lot of folks will be heading to the stores and getting what they need. But if you're in those areas that are looking at you, if your weather service office is telling you freezing rain and you're expecting anything, especially above a half inch, plan on prolonged power outages. As we said earlier in this update, just plan accordingly. And we say plan accordingly, make sure that you've got non-perishable food, Make sure that you've got your medications. Make sure if you got a generator, you got it ready and serviced and ready to go. All the tips we tell you what you need to do. Just be ready for that. Get some salt if you can. Also, very important, if you're going to use salt, put it down before the rain starts. Don't wait till after it's done. You keep your driveways as clear as you can from icing, and just get yourself prepared for a little cabin fever, because this is not going to leave very quickly for a lot of folks. It's going to linger around for a little bit. Schools are probably going to be closed for days, if not all next week for some people. And just get ready for the system. This is probably, like I said, definitely by far the biggest winter storm we've seen in recent memory. We've had some humdingers here and there, but not one that has impacted 50% of the country. It's a real big humdinger of a storm, and we just need to get ready for it. Okay? All right, that's y'all's update for today. Appreciate you guys checking us out. Next update will be tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow morning, I should say. And we'll be really looking at those high resolution models for tomorrow, and get you through the storm on the safe side. All right? You guys take it easy, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.